expand human life to other planets or helping internet access here on Earth, consider becoming part of the SpaceX team at spacex.com/careers. Now, with that, let's check back in with Zach down at Starbase one last time before launch. Howdy, Zach.
Hello, Kate and Shiva again. You can really feel the energy of the SpaceX team have gathered. We're standing just over miles away from the launch mount, and so from here we've got a very nice view. I would basically say these are some of the best front row seats you could get, and might I add, beachside as well. Now, the Starship team has worked incredibly hard to get ready for this test, and we're all clearly excited for T0. And as we get into the final moments, one issue that could hold the countdown or cancel the test altogether is if a boat enters the safety perimeter. Now, over my shoulder is the Gulf of Mexico, which is normally very open to all of the boaters, and is close to a safe zone. And T's space up to launch. Fingers crossed that does not happen. Now it's at Hawthorne as we get closer and closer to that -0.
We're just inside T-9. We're listening on one of the background loops right now. Flight director is talking about the issue we've had. Workization decision that we are going to offer to the nutrition, the long way wet dress. So we're going to continue accounts. We'll continue also we're also going to pull for the team and right away final word that team super heavy minus Starship vehicle on the way up, and of course the first stage as it comes back down towards the water landing in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, when both stages are loaded, you can see the condensation frost on the side of the first stage. We'll have just over 10 million pounds of liquid propellant on board. Inside T-7 minutes, we're continuing to count. Team is preparing for the hold and scrub at T-10 seconds. Now, the good news is everything's been going good. We're just working that one issue. So we are continuing to count. Team will get this as an excellent opportunity to run the end-to-end of the system. Now, in a launch, in the next few minutes, the guidance system would be performing its final alignment. We will be doing that this morning. The automated flight termination system would be armed. We won't need to arm it today as we won't be flying. And we'll do final thrust vector control checkouts, what we call wiggles of the Raptor engines on the first and second stages. Now, normally in a countdown, if we needed to hold, there's a view of the second stage Raptor engines just above the first stage. Now, as I mentioned, in a regular countdown, if we needed to hold, that would come at T-40 seconds. That's the point in the countdown where we can pause to wait for final checkouts or pressurization to complete. Now, earlier this morning, we thought we might have to hold at 40 seconds. One pressurization issue that the team is going to have to troubleshoot after this morning. So we won't stop at 40 seconds right now. We'll continue all the way down to 10 seconds, and then we'll go into a recycle.
John, you mentioned that we're going to be jumping into a wet dress rehearsal here, and I actually
now
think
we're coming up T-minus 5 minutes. Overall, though, Kate, Shiva, it's been a good day. It's a little sad listening to the say that we're going to have to stop at 10 seconds, but I guess that's for everybody. It gives us a real run through of the launch vehicle.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Of course, we wanted to see fire today and lift off, but that's okay. The point of the countdown is to allow the teams to progress to that T0 time in a coordinated fashion, and really to unveil any issues prior to the ignition sequence. So the countdown did its job today. It allowed us to identify that press issue, and like John mentioned, the teams are going to work through it, and we are going to basically call it off at T-minus 10 seconds. But the integrated launch teams and us, we are going to treat this as if it were still a launch day. We're going to do this, what we now call a wet dress rehearsal.
Yeah, and we've mentioned the term a couple of times here. We call it a wet dress rehearsal because we are wetting the propellant tanks. We are loading propellant into the vehicle. We've talked about the frontline a little bit here. That exercise is the stage 0 system, all of our infrastructure that loads propellants onto the pad. That exercises our procedures for the mission control teams. We're monitoring telemetry on the mission control consoles, looking at the pressures and the rates and the temperatures. And some of those things look a little bit different when you're getting up to the pre-flight pressurization levels and full propellant load. So we're learning things today about the integrated tests that are going to set us up for success in a future attempt later on, hopefully in the next 48 hours or so. And Kate, like it's also worth mentioning here, we're still going to take the count through to a pretty around the T-minus 10 second mark. So we're really going to exercise everything that we would up until that point in the vehicle states and ground procedures.
Yeah, it's like we said before, any data that we can collect today is super helpful. And that's exactly what we're doing. We are continuing to collect this data and allow the teams to have be better informed for the next attempt. Unfortunately, due to the needing to recycle the propellant, we are looking at a minimum of 48 hours until we are able to attempt this flight test again. So we're not quite sure what that timing will be at the moment of 48 minutes, or excuse me, of 48 hours at this point in time. But Shiva, exactly as you said, things look a little bit different on launch day. And we allowed the countdown to do its job, to basically get to this point, to allow the teams to work through the issues. And we're going to continue, like we said before, we're going to continue all this down all the way to T-minus 10 seconds. And that will really allow the teams to pretend like this is launch day and continue and gather that data.
Yeah, Kate, it's on the one hand, it's a little bittersweet. On the other hand, we watched them go all the way through first stage propellant load, just now wrapping up the second stage, even the header tanks up under the nose of the Starship that you can see on the monitors. Actually, that all went very well today. The weather was excellent. Everything was looking good. Sadly, we just have the one issue, but that is letting the team continue to count down. And we're going to continue with it here until we get the clock hold at T-minus 10 seconds.
Yeah, so for those of you that have just joined us, we're now at T-minus 1 minute and 30 seconds to what would have been the launch of our Starship flight test. But unfortunately, due to a stage 1 issue, we are going to utilize today as a wet dress rehearsal. Instead, we are not going to attempt launch. The teams are basically saying that we're scrubbing our launch attempt for today, and we are expecting a minimum of 48 hours in order to recycle. So it's all good news, though. There's nothing really to be sad about other than we had hoped to be able to lift off today, but that's okay.
Now, one thing to point out for folks, when we do come back, when we clear this and we fly, one of the things you'll hear in the last minute, you won't be hearing us because we'll be listening to the countdown. But at T-minus 30 seconds, that's when the flight director would give the final go for launch. Love to have heard that this morning, but it's something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
The other thing to look at is at T-minus 6 seconds, we begin lighting the engines. Up on your monitor, you can see there, T-minus 40 seconds. We did hit the 40-second hold point, and they are holding for a moment. In the end, they will release that hold. We'll go the last 30 seconds. But yes, when we do get to day of launch, the last thing to look at is in the last 6 seconds, light the Raptor engines in succession. So unlike Falcon 9, we're going to have to do that a little longer. We're hearing right now the clock is going to hold here at T-minus 40 seconds. The Super Heavy and Starship are looking good. So with that fast-paced morning, Gemma, we got through it fairly quickly. But at this point, we're going to have to call it a morning.
Yeah, that's right. So for those of you that have recently just joined us, we unfortunately had a hold on the countdown today, and that is going to scrub our launch attempt. But we are expecting a minimum of 48 hours in order to recycle. So be sure to keep an eye on our social channels, and we'll share information as soon as it becomes available. Until then, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.